Right now at 6:30, 7 News is on your side. We are live at the scene of a deadly police-involved shooting in Northeast in the Noma neighborhood that has closed part of New York Avenue. We're getting your workarounds as we learn new information from the chief of police who is on scene.
And this morning, police are actively searching for whoever shot and killed an 8-year-old boy. A live report from Landover as this investigation continues.
Yeah, good morning to you. As you can see, it's been a violent 24 hours, the second police shooting in 24 hours. I'm Ashley Rodriguez.
And I'm Robert Burton. Yeah, as you mentioned, no doubt it's a difficult morning in our area, but we're trying to take you through it here. We're on your side, making sure you stay safe and informed about this. And we want to start, we're going right to John Gonzalez live in Northeast with the latest on this police-involved shooting. John, it sounds like they found this guy sleeping at the wheel.
Yeah, right at the intersection of New York Avenue and Florida Avenue here in Northeast D.C., Robert. And we just got sound from Police Chief Robert Contee to break down exactly what they know at this point. But in the meantime, look at this. All of these roadways are closed off. A large section of New York Avenue between 4th and North Capitol Street and surrounding roads are all blocked off as this investigation continues. Now, here's what we know. Someone called 911 right at around 4 o'clock this morning to report a stopped vehicle at the intersection. When responding units arrived, they located that car, still stopped at the light, and police found the driver asleep, and they spotted a firearm. They retrieved back to their police cruisers, got shields, came back and attempted to wake the man up. He fled. It's unclear at this point if that man fired that weapon and if there was some sort of a shootout, but we know that one officer did fire their service weapon. And take a look. We have another camera on the other side that shows you that 4-door black BMW. It slammed into a tree at the intersection of New York and North Capitol. That vehicle with Maryland tags has been riddled with bullet holes, and we can also see the back window has been blown out. The police chief says 4 or 5 officers were involved in this, but again, only one, it appears, fired their service weapon. The ATF is now here to do a trace on the suspect's firearm. The individual, we are told, is known to law enforcement. Christine Eads, we have been told here on the ground that this area, this large police perimeter, will remain for several hours.
Yeah, that's right, John. So we need to find alternate routes because you want to avoid New York Avenue, like he said, please, through that area because it is closed between 4th Street and North Capitol Street. So New York Avenue already stacking up back to Montana Avenue. The best bet for you this morning is going to be to use Rhode Island Avenue or Bladensburg Road. 295 and the Anacostia Freeway is already jammed up, but avoid New York Avenue if you can because, like you can see, it's 6 miles an hour from Montana towards 9th Street. Taking a look.
Our breaking news on New York Avenue Northeast. D.C. Police Chief, you can see him right here. This is live. Robert Contee just arrived on scene. Let's listen in.
He awakened from his sleep, and at that point, that individual was engaged by officers, and then from some point from there, shots were fired. The subject was struck. The subject was taken to an area hospital, and he has been pronounced deceased at this time. Firearm has been recovered from the vehicle at this time. This matter is also under investigation by the Metropolitan Police Department, Internal Affairs, as well as our homicide unit. These are the very preliminary. This is the very preliminary information that we have at this time. I don't really have a lot of additional information. This matter is still under investigation. We'll be conducting a daylight canvass. We're asking that residents who use the New York Avenue corridor that they try to avoid this area. It's going to be pretty hectic for morning rush hour, but we're asking residents to please find an alternative route. And if there's any information that residents want to report to the police department, to please reach out to us at 202-727-9099.
Could you say more about the person who perhaps gave the call to 911 about the relationship between?
We don't know. It was a person who called in 911 because they saw the vehicle was stopped in traffic at a light, and the person was appeared to be unconscious behind the wheel of the vehicle.
So it wasn't until they got to the vehicle they were able to determine there was a
officers. Yeah, when they responded to the scene, looked inside to see what they were actually dealing with, they saw the individual inside with the handgun secreted here.
So it was at this light over here, Florida Avenue?
It happened back at Florida Avenue in New York.
How did it end up over here?
After the shots were fired, it appeared the individual in the car drove the vehicle from there down to this location where it came to rest right behind us here.
Do we know anything about that interaction? At what point the engagement turned that police felt they needed to fire?
So at this point, it's very early in the investigation. It's kind of hard to determine. As I mentioned, there was a ballistic shield that was deployed. So as we review body-worn camera and look through this, we'll try to get a better picture of what happened. But right now, the initial officer's body-worn camera appears to be somewhat restricted. The view is somewhat restricted because of the ballistic shield that's deployed in front of him. If that makes sense. So
This person is stopped at New York and Florida and is asleep.
Is asleep behind the wheel of the vehicle. We're not sure of if there was some kind of intoxication or under the influence or something. We just don't know that at this point in the investigation.
But in the roadway, not in the parking lot?
No, not in the parking lot. In the far right-hand traffic coming inbound D.C.
So, Chief, is there any sort of procedure or playbook with how to deal with that kind of a situation?
Well, it's not a situation, obviously, that we want to find ourselves in, but clearly what we know is that we had an armed individual behind the wheel of a vehicle. Between the time that the officers responded and the time that the officers actually engaged the individual, there was probably about a 20-minute gap. So in that time, the officers were formulating a plan, trying to figure out the best way to resolve this with an armed individual behind the wheel of a car, asleep at a traffic light. And unfortunately, this individual, he was in possession of a firearm tonight.
Did they wake him up?
The individual, there was an attempt to wake the guy up, and you can see from what I've seen from BWC, he was awakened at some point, but they were very careful trying to, you hear things like, we don't want to scare them, that kind of thing, as they were working their way through working their way really through the scenario. So right now, again, this is very preliminary stages of the investigation. We still have a lot that we have to go through, video cameras in the area. We need to review all of that, look at the history of this individual, why is he here at this point? Just a lot of unanswered questions that we don't have right now.
And now this
individual never shot at the police, right?
We don't know that just yet. That's part of the investigation.
So this is the second
Yeah.
police-involved shooting
Yeah.
in 24 hours.
Yeah, it is.
How are you feeling about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that we have to come face to face with armed gunmen in our community. Clearly when people are in possession of illegal firearms, we've been talking about that for a long time. It makes communities unsafe. It makes our police officers unsafe. It's unfortunate that someone lost their life tonight. I'm happy that our police officer, that he was not injured in this situation, but it's one of those things that it's not something that we look to be involved in.
And how many officers were involved in engaging with you, so to speak?
So there were probably about maybe 4 or 5 officers at least, but only, it appears right now, maybe only one person may have fired a shot.
And do you know anything yet about this particular firearm?
No, we don't know. We have our representatives from the ATF. The head of the Washington field office of the ATF is here with us. He's on the scene, so they'll be doing a trace on the firearm to see exactly what we have. From what we know preliminarily, this individual is known to law enforcement. Just kind of some of the preliminary checks that we've done. The individual is known to law enforcement, and we'll have to see what the rest of the investigation reveals at this point. Thank you. That's really all that we have. Yes, sir.
He reached for the weapon as he was being woken up. Is that the deal?
It's hard to say again because there's a shield that's in front of the person who has the body-worn camera. So it's kind of hard to say at this point, not being able to interview the officers or anything. We just don't know that level of detail at this point. But we can say that the person had a firearm on them inside of this vehicle for certain. Thank you so much.